Does DEI work?
Yes.
Let me tell you where DEI does not work. The NBA and the NFL. Where are the black guys in the National Hockey League?
Asai Williams.
DEI has become one of the most controversial topics within the past couple of years. But watch what happens when a DEI leader gets confronted by Dr. Phil and a black pastor who are anti-DEI. Let's dive in. But first, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Help us get to 1,000 followers on this channel. But without further ado, let's dive in.
Welcome.
Thank you.
When you say diversity, what do you mean?
For me personally, and I think for the industry and in corporate, we are looking at it broadly. We're looking at diversity as bringing in different backgrounds, whether that is industry experience, race, gender, sexual orientation.
Well, now, wait a minute. When you're doing diversity training, you're not talking about industry experience. You're talking about racial diversity. You're talking about gender.
We're talking about all of the above. I think good diversity programs are really about broadening perspectives within an organization. And I've certainly worked for organizations where, we only want people from a specific background. And that can be very limiting and impact what your organization looks like in terms of race and gender.
Man, if she's worked for an organization that only wants people from a specific background, which I'm assuming she means a specific race, then she should really call them out. Call them out. What company have you worked for that is looking for a specific type of race only?
Okay, well, you just said what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And that's what one of the big criticisms is that it's what it looks like, that there's diversity of bodies, that you've got a certain number of one from a certain race, another race, another race. Has nothing to do with diversity of ideology, has nothing to do with diversity of background. It has to do with quotas.
Right.
True?
No, I have never worked in an organization where we've had quotas.
I've employed as many as 1,000 people, mm-hmm. Most of them union, in the entertainment industry, and I'll damn sure tell you that there is a body count going on. Mm-hmm. Does DEI work?
Yes, I have seen tremendous success in...
Are you aware there are 100 studies that suggest that it doesn't work?
There are also studies. Harvard
but
Business
those are
Review,
done.
Deloitte.
Well, let's look at the Harvard Business Review because they actually did a study. The study found that over 5 years, 800 plus businesses consistently lost diversity in their managers, that no improvement in the proportions of white women, blacks, Hispanics, and Asians, and the participants feel external power trying to control their behavior.
Wow. Isn't that insane? Isn't that crazy that they're trying their hardest to force diversity and spending $9 billion. $9 billion they spent. And through all that effort, nothing. Nothing happens. It's a failure. It's almost as if it doesn't work. It's almost as if you can't force diversity. You're just going to end up with more problems in the end.
So I can only lean on my experience. So I've worked for 13 different companies throughout the course of my career. Uh-huh. And what I have seen is that employee engagement increases. Employees care about diversity programs. Candidates care. I'm coming from a recruiting background. Candidates ask about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it is important to them. There have been studies on Glassdoor that have shown that a good percentage of people will not accept an offer with a company that doesn't have intentional DE&I programs and initiatives.
I want to buy your house. I can pay you cash for your house no matter what condition it's in. If you need to sell your house for any...
Talk to me, Pastor.
Okay, so...
Preach on, brother.
Yeah. Well, a few things. If DEI works anywhere, it has to work everywhere. Let me tell you where DEI does not work. The NBA and the NFL.
I mean, that's absolutely true. If you really want a diverse workplace, a place where every single race is represented equally, then why not have that in the sporting industry or in every industry where there's an obvious lack of a certain race? Well, it's obvious because those fields are based on merit. You get to those places because of how good you are. But why can't it be so for every single other place? Why can't you have just merit-based? Why can't you have merit-based in every single field that we work in? Why this push for an equal amount of races in every single place, in every single field? It's absolutely insane.
Where are the Asian, Latino, and Hispanic basketball and football players? Where are the black guys in the National Hockey League? Those businesses are performance-based. It really comes down to, Dr. Phil, the issue of justice. And if you really want to go deep to the heart of this, and when I say that DEI treats the symptom but not the sickness, America is in a new civil war right now. The first civil war was the North versus the South. The new civil war is a war of ideologies concerning justice. And it's really going to come down to who gets to define what justice is, whether that's biblical justice or social justice. When moral law stands alone and DEI initiatives are based upon that, somebody gets to pretend that they are God.
I want to bring another important voice.
If I'm being charitable to the people who are pushing DEI, the argument would be that DEI is to correct past injustices that were based on race, redlining, discrimination in the workplace that was going on for a long time. And in order to fix that, basically we have to do our own discrimination, but in the other way. But that is the whole entire problem. You can't fix discrimination with discrimination. People are going to choose what they want to be. The reason why the NBA is filled with African Americans is because that's what a lot of African Americans are choosing. It's basically a part of the culture. So we can't just force diversity in random places and say, hey, we're fixing the issue. It's obvious that DEI doesn't work and it's not going to work. We have to figure out to fix this issue in a separate way that isn't DEI.
To this conversation, Eric Smith. He's an associate professor of rhetoric at York College of Pennsylvania and a public policy research scholar. He's joining us virtually. Eric says DEI should be called EMC, Equality, Merit, and Colorblindness. Eric, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I just need to say that the EMC that you mentioned was actually created by Christopher Rufo. He started that going on. And those principles are things that I like, but I would call DEI, contemporary DEI anyway, critical social justice.
You say that we're told demanding merit hurts minorities. Why is that being taught? Why is that being preached?
Well, it's being preached because people think that minorities don't have the same opportunities to acquire the same education as white people. Also, in oversimplification, what we should do then is not get rid of merit. We should help those students acquire those resources.
Okay, now, you got criticized for saying that you thought Black students should be taught standard English. Talk about that.
Well, that took place on the listserv in my field of rhetoric and composition, which is better described as woke studies at this point. And I'll be happy to come back on the show and explain that one day.
Okay.
But what I said was, I was pushing back on the idea, the almost universal idea, that teaching standard English to Black kids was a form of racism because you're asking them to speak white.
Isn't that insane? Isn't that just crazy that just asking for the basics, just the ability to speak English in a way where everybody can understand you is considered racism? I mean, this is the point where we got in this country where just the basics, just asking simple, basic, logical things like, hey, if you're in a country, maybe learn to speak the language properly is considered racist. Amazing.
I, as a pragmatist, say, well, you're giving them tools so that they can go out into the world and be happy, successful, fulfilled. They're not replacing however they talk. They're adding standard English to however they talk. But that was not received well.
Why not?
Well, because I was seen as somebody with false consciousness. I was seen as somebody who was a traitor to his race. I was seen as all kinds of things you call people who aren't acting the way they're supposed to be acting. And I need to say this, Dr. Phil, contemporary DEI cannot work without what's called prescriptive racism. And what is that? It's when you have a script, basically, a list of things that a person of a particular race is supposed to abide by. And if he doesn't, he is considered inauthentic or defective. You get this from Black people as well as white people, right? In fact, contemporary DEI cannot stand without prescriptive racism. It is prescriptive racism.
Let me ask you,
Yeah.
we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. What is the definition of equity?
Great question. And I think we confuse equity with equality. And equality means that everybody is treated the same. And equity means that we need to look at, for example, there's a great visual of a short person and a tall person, and they're both looking over a fence, and they have the same block to stand on. And the tall person, of course, can see over the fence, but the short person has not been lifted up enough to see over the fence. And so when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're talking about the fact that some demographics come to the table and have to overcome racism, unconscious bias, misogyny. And so how do we help level the playing field for everyone?
Okay, so that means you're trying to create equality of outcome. Mm-hmm. That's what I hear you saying about playing God. Yeah. How do you create equality of outcome when people aren't the same? You're right. Some people are shorter. Some people are taller looking over that fence. They can't both play in the NBA.
Right.
You can't create equality of outcome. What gives a DEI program the right to come in and try and alter the nature of things to create equality of outcome.
So-
That's been tried. That didn't work. That was called Marxism.
What I would say is that, I've been in the recruiting space for 25 years, and the way we have done recruiting traditionally relies heavily on things like networks, referral programs. And so who are we going to refer? We're going to refer the people that we know who are in our neighborhoods or who play golf with the CEO. And so you start to have a population in your organization that looks very much the same. And so what I'm advocating for is more intentional programs that reach a broader audience.
The problem with that is that when you try these diversity incentives, they don't work. Even if there's these racist hiring policies, the policy that you're coming up with is just racism, but on the other side. It's not fixing the issue.
All the more reason for merit. If you apply to or stick to meritocracy, it doesn't matter whether somebody is playing golf with the CEO or not. It's about matching those values, those skills that are necessary for the job.
I think one of the most important points that the pastor brought up is that DEI is an attempt to play God. It's an attempt to make things equal. And I think that from a biblical standpoint that we can see within the Bible that inequality is just a reality of the world, that there will always be those who have less and there will always be those who have more. And from a biblical standpoint, those who have more are responsible for helping those who have less. So these attempts to make everybody equal are always going to fail if we just know the reality of how God created the world. It's not going to work. But let me know what you think down below. Do you think DEI works, or do you think that DEI is an absolute failure? Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. More videos like this. Until next time, God bless.